Rain patters at the window, drawing quivering trails on the cobblestone lane. Elena Rossi sat quietly in the corner of a small Italian restaurant called Cantino Dono, her hands wrapped around a cup of warm tea that had long gone cold. The scent of basil and stewed tomatoes lingered in the air while soft Italian music played as if from another world. Before we dive into this, hit the subscribe button and tell us from where in the world you're watching from. A world where her heart had been lost long ago. Outside, the sky was dark, and people hurried to find shelter from the rain. Inside, the restaurant was packed. Couples whispered, families laughed. Yet Elena Rossi sat alone. She had grown used to that feeling, quiet, solitary, as if her life had been reduced to nothing more than a faint shadow of herself. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the menu. Every dish looked familiar, but she chose the same thing she'd ordered for weeks. Creamy mushroom pasta. Safe, simple, no decisions required. Elena Rossi's life, ever since she walked away from that abusive relationship, had revolved around just one word: safety. She bit her lip. The memories were still sharp. His shouting, the sleepless nights, when even the slightest sound set her spiraling into nightmares. She had escaped, but wounds never healed so easily. She knew she needed to step back into the world. Yet, every time she stood at the door, her legs shook as if shackled. She sat quietly at the small table by the window. The pasta in front of her still steamed. But Elena Rossi only twirled her fork as if sketching endless circles across her life. Since leaving that dark chapter behind, she often came here to hide. Canino Dono had soft music, warm yellow lights, and most importantly, no one here knew her. It was a space safe enough just to breathe. But tonight was different. The restaurant was crowded, noisier than usual. Laughter, clinking glasses, children giggling. All of it reminded Elena Rossi she didn't belong to that world of happiness. She only wanted to eat quickly, go home, close the door, and retreat into silence. A light touch on her shoulder made Elena flinch. Her heart pounded. Her fingers clenched the fork until her knuckles went white. She turned. A man stood there, tall, upright, broad-shouldered. Dark hair with a few silver strands at the temples. Calm brown eyes with an unusual steadiness. He wore a simple navy sweater, not flashy at all, yet somehow it was warm. He leaned slightly, his voice deep but gentle. "Excuse me, but the place is so crowded tonight. Would you mind if I sit here?" Elena opened her mouth, ready to refuse, but before the words came, he smiled faintly and added, "Don't worry, I'm very quiet when I read. Sometimes I even forget to breathe." The line was so unexpected that Elena almost laughed. Her guard didn't vanish, but the corners of her lips curved anyway. What kind of man says something like that? From the bar, Giuseppe Romano, the owner, with the silver mustache, secretly gave her a thumbs up as if to say, "It's fine, sweetheart." Elena drew in a breath, then gave a tiny nod. The man pulled out a chair and sat across from her, as if the seat had been his all along. He extended a hand. Alessandro Conti." Elena hesitated, then answered softly, "Elena. Pleasure to meet you, Elena," he said with a nod, nothing more. He ordered lasagna and a glass of red wine, then pulled an old book from his coat pocket. Opening it just as promised, immersed in reading, not bothering her at all. Elena exhaled in relief, yet her heartbeat refused to settle. It had been so long since she'd sat this close to a strange man without feeling threatened. And yet Alessandro, with his calm presence, unsettled her in a different way, not fear, but curiosity. She stole a glance. The warm light fell across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his nose. The subtle curve of his lips pressed in concentration. No sign of pretense, no forced attempt at small talk.
He was truly keeping his word.
She lifted a bite of pasta to her lips. This time, the creamy mushroom flavor felt richer. The clatter of cutlery, The surrounding chatter, none of it seemed so loud anymore. Everything slowed, softened. When Alessandro finally closed his book, his glass of wine was nearly empty. He looked up, offering a gentle smile. "Thank you for letting me share the table tonight. I really enjoyed it." Elena froze for a beat, then only nodded. She stood, paid her bill, and stepped outside. The rain still fell, but it no longer felt as heavy as it had when she arrived. For the first time in months, Elena realized her steps were lighter. Just a little, but different. Could it be that one brief encounter? No, not even a conversation was enough to shift her mood entirely. She didn't know. But one thing was certain. As the door of Cantina Dono closed behind her, Elena felt a small spark flicker alive in her heart. 2 days later, the rain was still drizzling. But Elena decided to return to Cantina Dono, not because she was particularly hungry or craving pasta, simply because there she felt a little less lonely. The tinkle of silverware, bursts of mirth, the aroma of basil and bubbling cheese together. It felt like a thin quilt laid over the hollows inside her. Rosa De Luca, the silver-haired server with a bun pinned neatly at the nape, hurried over the moment she noticed Elena step in. She offered a gentle smile, motioning with her hand. "Your usual spot is ready by the bookshelf beneath the black and white photograph of Italy. Saved it for you, Elena." Elena smiled, quietly thankful. From day one, Rosa De Luca had treated her like an old regular, though she'd only been coming for a handful of weeks. As Elena placed her bag on the chair, she heard Rosa De Luca's teasing lilt carry across. Soft, but just enough for a few nearby diners to snicker. "No charming gentleman keeping you company today?" Elena stiffened, nearly letting the fork slip from her fingers. Heat climbed her face, surely as red as a spoonful of tomato sauce. "Oh no, he's just," Elena faltered. Rosa De Luca winked, not waiting for any explanation. "I'm only playing, dear. Still, I must admit, you two made a good picture." Elena dipped her head at once, pretending to study the menu, though the lines blurred and drifted before her eyes. Each time she recalled Alessandro's quip, "I'm very quiet when I read. Sometimes I even forget to breathe." The corner of her mouth hitched. She told herself it was merely chance. Nothing else. He's probably put me out of mind already. Yet fate seemed fond of small tricks. Less than 10 minutes later, as Elena bent to retrieve the napkin she'd dropped, she glanced up and met a familiar look from across the room. Alessandro sat at a table by the far window, his book still open in one hand. He glanced up as if by accident and gave a slight nod, just a nod. Still, Elena's pulse leapt high. She ducked again toward her glass of water, scolding herself in silence. God, why am I blushing like a schoolgirl? She didn't dare stare, yet her eyes kept wandering back to him. Alessandro, as before, didn't approach. He remained seated, reading, now and then tasting his wine. Sometimes when their gazes brushed, he offered only the faintest smile, nothing more. And oddly, that not quite doing anything let Elena feel safe. No pressure, no demands, no awkwardness. Only the comfort of a familiar face in a crowded room, and somehow that steadied her. Rosa De Luca returned with a steaming plate of pasta, set it before Elena, then leaned in and whispered just loud. Enough for her to catch. Careful now. I think he's still watching you. Rosa De Luca. Elena choked, nearly sputtering on her water. All right, I'll behave. The waitress laughed, strolling away, leaving Elena mortified and secretly pleased. Elena began to eat, trying to look composed. Yet each time her cutlery clicked, she felt the sound echoed from the opposite table, as if the two of them were slipping into some invisible rhythm together. The meal moved on quietly. No words were traded, only quick glances and a couple of small smiles. But when Elena rose to leave, she heard a chair scrape on the far side. Alessandro stood as well. They reached the door almost together. Outside, The drizzle still fell, and by coincidence, they both lifted their umbrellas in near unison. For a breath, neither moved, listening to the rain tap the cobblestones. Then, with shy, careful steps, they drifted forward. "Oh," Alessandro arched a brow, a smile tugging at his lips. "We're matching again." Alina laughed, this time unable to hold it back. "I think it's just a coincidence, maybe." He nodded, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Or maybe it's the universe conspiring." The words made Alina pause. She didn't know how to respond, so she only shook her head, smiled softly, and turned away. But as she walked into the gentle rain, Alina realized her heart no longer felt weighed down. Instead, a new feeling slipped in. Curiosity, confusion, and something that almost felt like anticipation. That afternoon, the rain had stopped. The sky looked as if someone had just wiped it dry, leaving a faint strip of blue peeking between the rooftops. Cantino Dono opened its doors, the aroma of tomato sauce and freshly baked bread spilling out like a familiar greeting. Alina paused at the glass for a moment, catching her reflection. Her hair was neater, her lips bare of lipstick, but no longer pale. She reminded herself, it's just dinner, nothing to be nervous about. "Elena, your table's waiting," Rosa DeLuca called, her eyes twinkling behind round glasses. "By the bookshelf, right? I polished the Venice frame so you can look at it and feel a little happier." Elena laughed. "As long as the spaghetti isn't too al dente, I'll be happy enough." "Huh, all right, but I'll tell the kitchen. Al dente just right." Rosa DeLuca winked, setting down a pitcher of water and a slice of lemon in front of Elena. "And I won't ask about the handsome gentleman anymore." "Thank you," Elena replied, relieved by the promise, and yet her heart still listened. The restaurant wasn't too crowded tonight, just lively enough. Giuseppe Romano strolled back and forth, tapping his foot to the soft Italian music, occasionally shouting something in Italian toward the kitchen, like a conductor urging an orchestra and a crescendo. Elena opened the menu, though what she wanted was obvious. Spaghetti pomodoro, simple, light, comforting, like the right hug at the right moment. She was folding the menu closed when the door opened again. A tall silhouette, calm steps, a navy sweater, Alessandro. He paused to fasten a coat button, then looked up. Their eyes met briefly, so brief that if she tried to retell it, no one would believe her. He gave a small nod, a thin smile like a brushstroke of sepia ink. He chose a table by the opposite window, placing his book down as if it were a ritual. Elena pretended to study the Venice frame. Her heart thudded once, twice, then returned to a steady rhythm. "I came here to eat dinner, that's all." The spaghetti arrived quickly. Rosa DeLuca set the plate down and whispered, "Chef says tonight it's al dente, just right for a lady who likes to feel happy." Elena smiled, twirling the first strand of pasta. The sweet tart tomato and fresh basil woke her taste buds. She was about to sip her water when Rosa DeLuca returned, this time carrying a dessert that looked like happiness itself. Tiramisu dusted with cocoa fine as clouds. A small card stuck at an angle beside it. "Oh, I didn't order dessert," Elena murmured in surprise. Rosa DeLuca cleared her throat, hiding a grin. "Exactly, but someone insisted." She set the plate down and tapped the card. "Seems this one comes with a note." Elena unfolded the card. The handwriting leaned neat and deliberate, each stroke carefully considered. "Try it. It's better than pretending not to look at me all dinner." A laugh burst out of her, so clear and bright that Elena startled herself at the sound. She glanced quickly toward the window. Alessandro was still reading, but the corner of his lips was pretending not to curve upward. Who could that be from? Rosa DeLuca feigned innocence, her eyes sparkling like a child after pulling a prank. Elena forced a straight face, probably from the restaurant. A promotion for customers who are too shy to look at others. "Oh," Our new promotion is Cupid in an apron, Rosa DeLuca declared proudly. Would you like to reply? Elena looked at the tiramisu. The gentle blend of espresso and mascarpone called to her like an invitation to cross an invisible line. She broke off a small bite, letting the soft, bittersweet cream melt on her tongue. It was delicious. She pulled a pen from her bag, flipped the card over, and wrote a few words, hesitating only a second before handing it back to Rosa DeLuca. Thank you, but I'm pretty good at pretending too. Well, Rosa DeLuca puckered her lips as if she'd just read a punchline. That'll do. She strode off toward the other table like a seasoned mail carrier. From across the room, Elena saw Alessandro receive the card with a slight nod. He read it, raised an eyebrow, then put pen to paper. Rosa DeLuca returned so quickly that it was as though the words might evaporate if delayed. Warning number 1. Pretend more than 3 times and the penalty is sharing the tiramisu. Elena laughed louder this time, a laugh so contagious that a few customers nearby glanced over, smiling along as if to say, well, isn't that table sweet? She dipped her fork into the tiramisu, writing back with invisible strokes in the air. I accept the penalty, but I reserve the right to hide my smile. Message delivered. Alessandro Reed paused a little longer this time, as though searching for some rare clause in his mind. Then Rosa DeLuca hurried back, breathless in mock drama. Breaking news. Article 12, Romantic Dinner Code. Hiding a smile is valid only if your eyes speak the truth. Elena rested her chin on her hand, warmth rising in her chest. She turned to the window. Thin strands of sunset brushed the glass. Out there, passers-by had no idea that at one small table, someone had just laughed for the first time in months. Any more deliveries? Rosa DeLuca tilted her head. I might start charging courier fees. 1 bite of tiramisu. My goodness, you really are Cupid in an apron. Elena laughed, cutting off a generous slice and pushing it toward Rosa DeLuca. Advanced payment. Grazie. Rosa DeLuca popped a bite, eyes closing in bliss. I predict that young man will surrender within 2 more rounds. Surrender what exactly? Surrender pretending, of course, she winked. People can fake not looking, but it's hard to fake not caring. The words made Elena's heart dip. Not in fear, but because they struck something real. She nodded softly, as if agreeing with herself. The exchange ended there for the night. Alessandro sent no further notes. He finished his meal, opened his book again, and sipped his wine. At the other table, Elena ate more slowly, unable to stop. Small smiles from surfacing. The air around her shifted lighter, brighter, shimmering like the last traces of sunlight. Giuseppe Romano passed by, resting a hand on the back of Elena's chair. Tiramisu. All right. Senorina. Delicious. Yes, I thought. So too. Tonight, it's special. Seasoned with a little courage, he went the way only someone who had watched countless couples pass through these tables could. When Elena rose to pay, Rosa DeLuca was waiting at the counter. She handed back the card. Now wiped clean, keep it as a memento, will you? The card belongs to the restaurant, but the words belong to something that's just beginning. Elena took it, feeling as though she was tucking away a fragment of the evening. Thank you. The door opened. No rain, no wind, just enough chill to make one pull a coat tighter. Unexpectedly, Alessandro stepped out almost at the same time. They stood together on the small steps, the city before them like a stage just gone. Dark. Ah, he chuckled, lifting both hands in mock confession. That tiramisu stunt. I heard it's supposed to be pretty effective at breaking down pretending. Elena bit her lip, nearly laughing again. I'd say the evidence is convincing. And what about the penalty? What penalty? She teased, tilting her head. Splitting another dessert next time. His eyes glinted, both gentle and mischievous. If, of course, the defendant agrees to keep pretending. Elena looked down at her shoes, then up again. Something inside her, like a light thread, tied itself to this moment. She nodded, not so much to him as to the courage just sprouting in her. Maybe I'll keep pretending for one more dinner. Alessandro tilted his head as though accepting the pleasant verdict. Then I'll take my leave before I'm charged with looking too long. You're already guilty, Elena countered, confessing this quickly. Guilty is charged, he smiled, stepping back. Have a good evening, Elena. You too. He walked away, the navy sweater drifting into the flow of people until it blended into the street. Elena lingered, looking at the small card in her hand. The words, "Try it. It's better than pretending not to look at me all dinner," still felt warm, as if the ink hadn't yet dried inside her heart. On the way home, Elena realized she was walking slower, not because she feared turning her back on the world, but because she wanted to savor the aftertaste of this strange evening. A dessert, a few notes, and laughter returning. First soft, then aloud, like little bells ringing in the promise of a new season. Back at her apartment, she switched on the kitchen light, poured a glass of water, leaned against the fridge, and smiled at the air. She pinned the card to the fridge with Serena Bianchi's silly pizza slice magnet and scribbled on the corner. And tiny marker. Dayax laughed out loud. The air in the room suddenly felt lighter. The shadows were still there, but thinner now. Somewhere out there was a man who liked books and sent tiramisu as messages. And here there was a heart that had just remembered how to laugh. That night, Elena went to bed early. And for the first time in months, she dreamed of a small restaurant. Golden lights, slow Italian music, and a table where two people shared dessert. No longer pretending not to see each other. The weather was mild that day, and Cantino Dono glowed under the afternoon sun. Elena walked in, still carrying the sweetness of the tiramisu message from the other night. She had never thought she could laugh out loud because of a few handwritten lines, but clearly it had happened. Her usual table was free. Rosa De Luca greeted her with a mischievous smile, but this time no teasing. She simply sat down the menu with a remark. "I have a feeling tonight will be special, Elena." Dinner passed peacefully enough, but as Elena was paying at the counter, the restaurant door opened. Alessandro appeared. This time he didn't sit down right away. He walked straight over to her at the counter. "Oh," he raised an eyebrow. "Looks like our timing matches again." Elena laughed. "I'm starting to think Cantino Dono has some kind of secret matchmaking schedule." "Quite possible." Alessandro nodded thoughtfully, a playful glint in his brown eyes. "But if it keeps happening, eventually people might think I'm following you." Elena flinched slightly, then saw his smile and knew it was a joke. "So what's the solution according to the romantic dinner code?" "The solution," Alessandro said, half serious, half amused, "is that we should get in touch beforehand, so our encounters won't be branded dangerous coincidences anymore." Her heart skipped as she looked at him. The way he said it made everything sound both light and reasonable. After a beat of hesitation, she nodded. "All right, but fair warning, I text really slowly." "That's fine," Alessandro replied, handing her his phone. "Patience is part of my job." She chuckled, typing in her number. When the name Elena appeared on his screen, Alessandro said quietly, "Good, now the tiramisu verdicts can come straight from the official source." Elena burst into laughter, a sound bright enough to make a few nearby patrons glance over and smile. That evening, back in her apartment, Elena settled onto the sofa and unlocked her phone. Her pulse jumped when she spotted a fresh message alert, right then and there. Unexpectedly. "Alessandro, hello, Elena. This is a test note to verify the system. If received, kindly confirm." She chuckled and tapped a reply. "Elena, received. The system is functioning well." He answered at once, without missing even a heartbeat. "Alessandro, good. First ruling, lasagna defeats fettuccine 2-1. Attached sat a photo of piping lasagna, the lens fogged from the steam. Elena snorted. She snapped a picture of the leftover fettuccine in her fridge and fired it back. Elena, objection. Fettuccine is recovering off the pitch. Alessandro's court grants a postponement, but don't expect the score to budge. She laughed aloud alone. In her apartment, the sound rang like a familiar song whose tune she'd misplaced. In the days after that, their messages became a steady sprinkle of seasoning. Nothing grand, just tiny pieces of everyday life. One morning, he sent a cappuccino with heart-shaped foam. "The universe is messing with me," she replied, adding, "A cup of hot cocoa." The universe says, "Peace first." At lunch, Alina sent a photo of her homemade pesto pasta. "Pesto equals green hope." Alessandro wrote back, "Conclusion, hope is edible." One wet evening, he wrote, strolling past a damp street. Article 7 of the code. When it rains, people tend to miss each other. She paused, then answered, "Then switch on Italian music or you'll be breaking the law." The playful lines, brief and light, gave Elena a new kind of thrill. Each time her phone hummed, her heart fluttered like hearing a strange Italian tune for the first time. One night while editing an article, Elena received a picture of a white plate, a neat square of lasagna standing proudly in the center like a champion. Alessandro, breaking news. Lasagna nets a hat trick. Elena burst into laughter, quickly snapping her reheated fettuccine. Elena, fettuccine counters 3-2, spirit unbroken. A rolling laughter emoji appeared instantly. Then came they. Next pain, Alessandro, maybe we should call V for a verdict. Tomorrow night, Canino Dono, 700 p.m. Elena's heart halted for a beat. The invite felt so natural, truly unforced, as if he'd simply opened the door and left it to her whether to step through. She stared at the screen a moment, then typed, "Elena, if VR includes dessert." Alessandro noted, "Condition accepted." She set the phone aside, her heart warm as though wrapped in a soft blanket. Somewhere in her mind, laughter returned, clear, light, and full of promise. Sunday afternoon. The park gleamed in sunlight after the previous night's rain. Drops glittered on branches. The breeze carried the smell of fresh grass tangled with the aroma of roasted coffee drifting from a small shop by the gate. Elena arrived earlier than planned, choosing a wooden bench under a maple tree. She held a cup of hot cappuccino, warmth spreading through her palms, though her heart still beat unevenly fast. "Hello, Elena," a deep, gentle voice sounded from behind. Alessandro approached, wearing a white shirt beneath a light sweater. In his hands were 2 croissants wrapped in brown paper. "I didn't know which you like, so I bought both, butter and almond, just in case we ended up debating." Elena laughed. "You plan to turn breakfast into a battle?" "Of course." Alessandro settled beside her. "But this is the kindest battle I've ever fought." They shared the pastries, eating slowly while children hollered and chased each other over the grass. A chubby dog spun in circles, trying to bite its own tail. And Elena burst out laughing, her voice crisp and bright like the day itself. When the last crumb was gone, they leaned back on the bench, watching the lake mirror the blue sky. Elena drew a long breath, sensing it was time to say something true. "Alessandro." She hesitated, twisting the lid of her cup. "I have to admit something." He kept quiet, turning his head toward her, patient eyes steady on hers. I'm not ready for love." Elena breathed out, her voice shaking a little. "I'm improving, but whenever I think about beginning again, my heart still stumbles. It's like a door that hasn't swung open all the way." A gust of wind rattled dry leaves, spinning them gently before they settled on the stone path. Alessandro followed them with his gaze, then smiled softly. "Thank you for your honesty and for saying it early. Most people keep it shut inside until it's too late, and then everything unravels." Elena blinked, startled. You're not upset? No. He shook his head. I just need to know where I should stand. Close enough to hear you laugh. Far enough not to make you feel cornered. His words lay over her heart like a warm quilt. She stayed. Quiet, eyes stinging, though her lips nearly curved into a smile. Alessandro lifted a shoulder, his tone suddenly playful. But I have one bad habit. I make guesses. Guesses? Elena tipped her head. He thought for a moment, then spoke slowly, as though afraid the breeze might carry the words away. And my hunch says that sooner or later you'll become my wife. Elena froze. The words dropped into her mind like a stone into water, rippling outward. Half of her wanted to laugh. Is he crazy? The other half felt her heart swell with inexplicable warmth. You realize that sounds terrifying, right? She shot him a look, though her cheeks were already flushed pink. I do, he answered evenly. That's why it only applies if you want it. If you think it's ridiculous, just laugh in my face. I'll buy you pastries as an apology. Elena covered her mouth, laughing despite herself. You might be the first man to confess while preparing the apology in advance. Better to be careful from the start, he grinned. Besides, if I can make you laugh, then even getting scolded is worth it. She held his gaze a moment longer. In the afternoon light, Alessandro's brown eyes carried no pressure, only calm certainty. His prediction wasn't a chain, but more like a kite string, free to soar or rest, depending on the hand holding it. Her voice softened. And if I need more time, then I'll wait. While I wait, I'll keep sending you food photos, bad jokes, and maybe sit in the park with you like this. He smiled. My only request, you try to laugh at least twice every time we meet. You're setting targets now. Elena laughed. Yeah, but easy ones, Alessandro replied. Who knows? Maybe you'll exceed them, like just now. This time, Elena laughed freely. She realized she'd broken her own record. In 1 hour, she had laughed more than in the entire previous month combined. When they parted at the park gate, Alessandro handed her half of the almond croissant wrapped in paper, in case she get hungry on the way home, or in case you need an excuse to text me and complain about that reckless prediction. Elena accepted it, her eyes shining. Then I'll save it to text for her. Real. Good for me, he said with a small bow. Good night, Elena, you too. They walked off in opposite directions, their steps slowing as if to prolong the moment. Elena held the little bundle in her hand, her lips curving upward. The prediction hadn't scared her at all. It felt like a tiny flower sprouting from a crack in her heart, fragile but whole and full of hope. That night, Elena placed the remaining half croissant on her table, snapped a photo, and sent it to Alessandro with a message. Elena, physical evidence for next time. His reply came instantly. Alessandro noted, keep it safe. I'll bring a fresh one next time. Elena sat down her phone, smiling softly, and for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep with warmth spreading from her chest all the way to her fingertips. The city morning was still misty. The sun had not yet become harsh. Elena stood before the mirror, opening a drawer she hadn't touched in ages. Among old lipsticks, she found a shade of red whose name she had forgotten. The tube was scratched, but when twisted up, the tip remained intact like a small reminder. Some things that once belonged to you are only asleep, not gone. She hesitated for a few seconds, then dabbed it lightly. The red instantly brightened her face as if someone had drawn back the curtains to let sunlight pour into the room. Tilting her head, she studied herself longer than usual, then laughed softly. Hello, radiant version of me. She tied her hair neatly, grabbed her canvas bag, and headed to the small market downtown. The herb stand was lush that morning, basil, bundled in green bunches, its sharp freshness lingering in the air. Elena brushed her fingers gently over the leaves, coolness pressing into her fingertips. One small basil plant, she told the vendor, and a few bunches for pesto. On her way home, her phone buzzed. Serena Bianchi, what's for dinner? Would you like me to bring over some pastries? Elena, I'll try making pesto. If it's terrible, you can bring rescue pastries. Serena Bianchi, got it. Rescue kid on standby. Elena laughed aloud on the sidewalk. It had been a long time since a friend's message felt like birdsong. Small, but enough to lift her head. She stopped at the supermarket to buy cheese, pine nuts, and miscellaneous items. By the time she reached the cashier, her canvas bag was heavy. Just as she pushed through the doors, a familiar voice said, "I knew it. Today is Basil Day." Alessandro leaned against a column by the exit, holding a paper bag and 2 takeaway coffees. Fresh brew? He lifted 1 cup. Less sugar for you? Elena paused, then smiled. Showing up like this? Are you following the scent of herbs? No. Alessandro shrugged. I follow hunches. Mine said that if you carried all this alone, Basil would be upset. He took the bag from her, testing the weight. Wow, so Basil weighs like an entire summer. That's what makes it worth it, Elena countered. You sure you can carry it? There's also cheese, pine nuts, and my pride in here. Then let me carry your pride too. He grinned, handing her the coffee. Drink before the foam disappears. They walked side by side on the sidewalk, their steps naturally in sync as if rehearsed. Many times, occasionally, Alessandro switched hands, finding a grimace. How does Basil manage to accumulate mysterious weight? Because it knows it's destined to become pesto. A noble fate, Elena said solemnly. Ah, that explains it, Alessandro nodded. I'll honor that fate by tasting your cooking. You should. Be careful what you wish for, Elena chuckled. My pesto could be a macro disaster. I came armed with courage today, he replied. If it fails, I'll buy garlic bread. 2 portions. A morning breeze lifted the hem of Elena's shirt. She sipped her coffee, the gentle bitterness sliding down her throat, leaving warmth behind. Unconsciously, she glanced at him. Alessandro was. Looking straight ahead, upright, carrying her bag as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Thank you, she said quietly. For the coffee or the bag? He asked, glancing at her. For making me laugh today, Elena answered. He smiled, but said nothing more. They walked a short distance before reaching her building. At the steps, he set the bag down and offered, let me help carry it upstairs. No need, Elena shook her head. I can manage. Beside, she lowered her voice, half teasing, half true. I want to carry Summer up myself. All right. Alessandro stepped back. Then let me do one last thing. Wish you happy cooking. If the pesto succeeds, send me a picture. If it fails, I won't ask why. Don't be afraid to ask, Elena laughed. I'll just blame the basil. Or the weather, he said with a nod, then left with his familiar little bow. Her small kitchen welcomed her with sunlight spilling through the window. Elena placed the basil pot on the sill, watered it, and turned it gently toward the sun. Hello, little Summer, she whispered. Help me smell a little brighter. She put on soft Italian music. The clatter of knife and board, garlic sizzling, brought back echoes of calmer days long gone. Toasted pine nuts filled the air with a nutty fragrance. She crushed basil leaves, the green bruising into deeper shades, releasing a pungent aroma that made her laugh. Truly a noble fate. When the pesto was blended, she tossed it with pasta and sprinkled parmesan. A plate of vivid green noodles. Elena stood watching for a while, her heart swelling with quiet pride. Not because it looked pretty, but because she had made it herself, unafraid of failure, unafraid of knocks at the door or shadows. Just music and basil. She snapped a quick photo and sent it. Elena. Photo, assignment submitted. Noble fate fulfilled. Alessandro looks like Summer. I'll score it remotely. 10 out of 10, Elena biased. You haven't even tasted it, Alessandro. The last point reserved for when I do. Elena laughed. She ate slowly, savoring the creamy cheese, the fresh basil, and above all the bright, unnameable feeling blooming inside. Afterward, she cleaned the kitchen, packed the leftovers, and before sealing the box, stole one more bite. She nodded. This time I win. In the afternoon, Serena Bianchi dropped by, arms full of pastries. Rescue team here. She stepped inside, sniffing the air, her eyes wide. Oh my God, Elena cooked. Give me some. It's only pesto, Elena said with a laugh. But I made it myself. Serena Bianchi tasted a forkful, then clutched her chest theatrically. My friend is back. Somebody hand her an Oscar for healing cuisine. Then her voice softened as she studied Elena. You've changed. Your eyes are brighter, your lips redder, and I think you smile more. Elena leaned against the counter, laughing aloud. I went to the market, bought basil, and retrieved a few things. Like your heart. Serena Bianchi blinked. Yes. Elena tilted her head, at least for today. They chatted for a while. When Serena Bianchi left, the apartment grew quiet again, but no longer empty. Elena swept the floor, wiped the window ledge, placed a trimmed basil stem into a glass jar, and strung a line of yellow lights beneath the kitchen shelf. When the lights flicked on, the kitchen wore a new coat. Her phone buzzed. Alessandro. Is Basil upset? Elena, it's plump and thriving. I gave it sunlight. Alessandro, good. Tomorrow, it'll probably brag to the neighbor that it was photographed. Elena, and you? What will you brag about, Alessandro? That today I carried an entire summer. Elena read the words, her chest softening. She typed, Elena, thank you for helping. Alessandro, it's nothing. I like walking beside people who are finding joy again. She set the phone down and leaned against the kitchen wall. Gratitude spread through her like a cool breeze. Music still played softly. Outside, sunset painted the sky with streaks of orange. Elena reached for the red lipstick and dabbed it once more. In the reflection of the cabinet glass, it appeared to be a tiny flower blooming. That evening, she finished editing for the magazine. While waiting for a file to upload, she texted Luisa Greco. Elena, morning walk tomorrow. I want to sun my basil. Luisa Greco, I thought only basil needed sun. Turns out its owner does too. Elena, right. The owner also needs sun to bloom. Luisa Greco, got it. Pick you up at 7 o'clock. Wear that new red lipstick. Elena laughed, tapping the desk in rhythm with the music. She turned off the computer and stepped onto the balcony. The city pulsed with lights. From afar, the low wail of a train horn drifted like a melancholy song, but her heart wasn't sad. She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and felt her chest swell with something nameless. Maybe hope, maybe peace, or simply life. Late at night before sleep, Elena typed one more line. Elena, if you're free tomorrow, stop by and take a box of pesto. The fee is, tell me something funny, Alessandro deal. I know a few things that'll make you laugh 3 times. 3 times? Elena smiled, laying her head on her arm. All right, I'll allow it. She switched off the light. In the familiar darkness, the laughter from earlier still rang clear and bright as glass. On the windowsill, the basil sat quietly. But Elena knew it was growing, just like her heart, rising gently above the waterline, reaching for new light. And somewhere out there was a man who had carried an entire summer for her, then stepped back just far enough to give her laughter space to bloom. Small but audible, memorable, and enough to begin tomorrow with another smile. Loving this story. This story belongs to Soul Stories. If you see it anywhere else, please come back to our official channel to enjoy it in full. The small movie theater set tucked away on a quiet street with only a few yellow bulbs glowing above the entrance casting light onto the sidewalk. That evening's screening wasn't crowded, and the film wasn't particularly famous, which was precisely why Alina agreed to go with Alessandro. No big crowd, no noise, just enough space for the two of them to sit quietly side by side. The movie was a gentle story about a single man raising a cat and a neighbor girl who often visited. Now and then, Alina smiled. Sometimes Alessandro leaned over to murmur a short remark. "That cat definitely knows more secrets than its owner," he whispered, making Elena stifle a laugh behind her hand. When the film ended, they stepped outside. The city night was cool and calm, the breeze carrying the scent of milkwood flowers. Elena stayed silent the whole walk back, her hands gripping the straps of her bag tightly. Alessandro didn't ask anything. He simply walked slowly, keeping just the right distance. At the gate to her building, Elena stopped. She turned her back to him, eyes fixed on the darkness beneath the trees. Her voice was hoarse. "Alessandro, I think I need to say it. If not, it'll keep weighing me down." He didn't nod, didn't speak, only stayed silent as if granting permission. Elena drew a deep breath, and then she told him. She told him about the months of being controlled, watched, and accused without reason. About the words that cut like knives, the hand that was raised even if it didn't always fall enough to brand fear deep into her. She told him about nights curled in a corner, clutching a pillow to muffle sobs, her heart racing at the sound of footsteps in the hall. And finally, she told him about the morning she left with only one suitcase, a few documents, and an old photo of her parents. When she finished, Elena broke down in tears. Tears streamed uncontrollably. She felt ashamed for being reduced to something so small, yet relieved to have finally spoken it aloud. Alessandro remained silent. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush. To comfort her, he simply reached out and held her hand. His grip was warm, steady, not trembling, not overbearing. Just a simple hold, enough for her to know she was no longer standing alone in the dark. When Elena tried to wipe her tears, Alessandro finally spoke, his voice as calm as always. "After hearing all that, I'm even more certain I was right." Elena blinked at him, startled. "Right about what?" "Right about saying you're stronger than you think," Alessandro replied, his gaze steady. "And right about predicting that sooner or later, you'll become my wife." For a moment, Elena wanted to cry harder and laugh at the same time. Tears still traced her cheeks, but her lips trembled with a half-helpless, half-moved laugh. "Don't you ever stop with that prediction," she blurted, her tone part reproach, part plea for one more laugh. Alessandro smiled, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I can't. It's a bad habit, but one I don't want to break." Elena bit her lip, then laughed through her tears. The sound was rough but real, no longer forced. A few passers-by glanced at them, probably thinking they were just another couple reconciling after an argument. But only Elena and Alessandro knew that in that moment, a door inside her had just cracked open. She wiped her face and whispered, "And if one day you turn out to be wrong, then I'll admit defeat," Alessandro said, more serious now. "But at least I tried to predict something beautiful. And I tried to believe that even among scars, there's still room for something new." Elena stared at him for a long moment, then lowered her head with a faint laugh. "You really are troublesome." "Yeah," Alessandro answered softly. "But I hope I'm the kind of trouble you'll get used to." They stood together a little longer at the gate. The night seemed gentler, streetlights spilling golden light onto the wet pavement. Elena breathed deeply, realizing her chest no longer felt as heavy. The fear was still there, but threaded with an unfamiliar peace. "Good night, Elena. Good night to you too." When Alessandro turned away, Elena sat down on the steps, covering her face. Her cheeks were still wet, but her smile hadn't faded. And for the first time, she didn't feel ashamed for crying and laughing at once. She knew that laughter, raw as it was proof that she was slowly coming back to life. The French restaurant sat on a lit-up street warm with white boil curtains and glowing clusters of candles. Elena had hesitated for an entire week before accepting Alessandro's invitation. A change of scenery, he had said. Not pasta this time, but wine and baguettes. She wore a simple blue dress, the first she had bought since leaving her past behind. When she stepped inside, Alessandro's gaze lingered briefly, but he didn't offer a blunt compliment. Instead, he smiled and pulled out her chair. Tonight, blue wins by a landslide. Elena laughed, her heart easing. The soft violin, the scent of butter and wine, all of it beckoned toward a peaceful evening. They ordered onion soup, duck al range, and Alessandro of course didn't forget dessert. If this place has tiramisu, I'll give it a fair comparison. With Cantino Dono, he teased. Dinner unfolded slowly. Elena listened to Alessandro talk about his childhood trips to Italy with his mother, and about the time he was nearly prosecuted by a neighbor's dog for stealing cookies. She laughed more than she expected, her hand resting on her wine glass, forgetting the red reflection shining in her eyes. Then, just as the main course arrived, Elena froze. From a corner table came a laugh she recognized too well. She turned, and her whole body went cold. Him, the man who had once been her darkness. He wore a black shirt with the top buttons undone, seated with a few friends, lazily swirling his wine glass. When their eyes met, Elena's heart clenched as if an unseen hand was squeezing it tight. Elena. His voice stretched out her name. Taunting. Alessandro set down his fork at once. His gaze sharpened, though his tone remained calm. Want to step outside? He asked softly. Elena swallowed hard and gave a slight nod, but it was already too late. The man was rising, moving toward them, his eyes red with drink, his half-smile dripping with challenge. You should return to your table, Alessandro said, voice steady as he placed himself squarely between the man and Elena. Oh, Elena, the man drawled, trying to slip past, but Alessandro didn't shift an inch. There's tiramisu here. That's much better than making trouble, Alessandro remarked, still composed, as if discussing the weather. A taut silence pressed down on the room. The man stopped, his smirk wavering. He began a scoff, but then his stare locked squarely onto Alessandro. His expression changed entirely. Detective Conti. Elena's breath hitched. He spoke the name as if swallowing a pebble. His defiance leaked into surprise and then wariness. Alessandro's face didn't alter. His cold look alone reminded him he was more than a man simply having dinner. I trust you don't want anything unfortunate happening here, he said evenly. Go back to your table. The man gulped and eased back. I didn't know you were, he faltered, then turned sharply and went to his table, his friends staring at him in confusion. The restaurant resumed its soft murmuring rhythm almost immediately, once more, as though nothing at all had happened. But for Elena, the noise had muted away. All that remained was the thudding of her heartbeat and Alessandro's hand, set firmly over hers, steady as an anchor. Moments later, they slipped out of the restaurant, quiet. On the way out of the French place, Elena barely spoke. The night wind lingered around them, and the scent of orange glaze from the duck still clung faintly to her sleeve. Alessandro walked at her side, keeping that gentle distance as always. At the third corner, Elena stopped. Come up for tea? She asked evenly. I need to hear it clearly. Alessandro nodded. Her small apartment welcomed them with the smell of basil and a hint of vanilla from a candle Elena had lit. She poured tea, set 2 cups down, her hand shaking slightly before she steadied herself. Alessandro didn't rush to talk. He sat upright, fingers clasped, eyes on Elena as if he didn't want to miss the smallest flicker of her expression. So, you're a detective? Elena began without circling. Yes, Alessandro said softly. I work in the unit that investigates abuse cases involving women and children. Elena propped her elbows on the table, staring at the rim of her cup. From the start, you knew about me. No. Alessandro shook his head firmly. I had no idea, and I never looked into you. I was only a stranger asking to share a table. Only tonight, when he recognized me first, did I connect the dots. I'd crossed paths with him in another case some time back. Elena let out a breath. Part of her felt lighter. Another part was still wound tight like a drawn string. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. Alessandro met her eyes, speaking slowly. Because I didn't want you to think of yourself as a case file. I just wanted to be Alessandro. The kitchen fell still. His words dropped like a pebble, sending ripples all the way to the edges of her chest. Elena's mouth curved faintly, her eyes stinging. You can be angry, he went on, about me keeping quiet. But I thought silence at first would be fair or so. You wouldn't see me only through my job. I wanted, if you gave me a chance, for it to be because you wanted it. Not because standing next to a man with a badge made you feel safe. Elena pressed her lips together and gave a small nod. And tonight when he came closer, tonight was about right now, Alessandro replied. I stepped in because it was needed. Not because I'm a detective, because I was the one with you. A damp, small smile tugged at her mouth. If you keep saying things like that, I might actually believe you. Believe it. Alessandro winked, just a hint of his usual mischief. I like being believed. They sat in quiet for a moment, only the kettle bubbling softly on the stove. Elena rose, took a tin of butter cookies, and opened it. The sweet smell filled the room, smoothing the jagged edges left inside her chest. Do you have a plan? She asked quietly. I mean, if he shows up again. I won't impose a plan on your life, Alessandro said. But if you want, I can offer some simple steps. Always go out with someone you trust when it's late. Keep emergency contacts close. If you feel followed, head straight to a crowded place and call for help. And he paused. When you're ready, we can work with the restaurant so they'll keep watch. Elena nodded, taking it in. No jargon, no orders, just small sturdy ropes to steady her mind. And me? Alessandro added slowly. I won't use my job to stay a step ahead of your life. I won't dig, I won't follow. If I need to know something, I'll ask and wait for you to answer. Elena rested her chin on her hand. Are you always this kind? I can be sarcastic too, he said thoughtfully. But maybe I'll save that for later. Elena laughed out loud, then shook her head as tears suddenly welled again, spilling too fast for her to catch. Alessandro said nothing, only picked up a tissue and held it out. His fingers brushed the back of her hand gently, as if asking permission. She turned her hand over slightly. He held it firm enough, warm enough. Sorry, she whispered. I cry a lot these days. Crying is another way to breathe, Alessandro replied. So cry, then have another cookie. She laughed through tears. If you weren't a detective, you'd make a good comedian. My childhood dream was to sell ice cream, he deadpanned. But life shoved me off course. Life shoved you into an interrogation room? Elena raised an eyebrow. Yeah, but I still hand out ice cream sometimes, Alessandro said with a wink. Not to criminals, of course. Elena wiped her face, smiling more clearly now. Why did you choose this job? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Alessandro looked out the window where the streetlight drew a halo in the dark. When I was little, there was a neighbor lady. She always wore a green hat and planted flowers outside her door. Then one season, all the flowers withered. After that, she moved away. No one knew why. As I grew up, I saw more and more houses with withered flowers. I thought, maybe I can do something. So at least they know they don't have to go alone. Elena squeezed his hand tighter. Thank you for choosing it. And thank you for letting me sit at your table that day, Alessandro said with a smile in his eyes. Otherwise, I'd still only know that tiramisu beats trouble in theory, Elena giggled. Warmth spread through the kitchen as if another candle had been lit. She poured more tea and slid a cup toward him. Drink. Your voice must be tired. You've talked more than usual tonight. Maybe because I was afraid you'd misunderstand, he admitted. Afraid you'd think I approached you because of my job. But the truth is, I followed your smile. The one that hides behind your cup. Oh. Alina pretended to cover her mouth, caught red-handed. Yep, and I intend to keep catching you. Gently she teased. Don't scare me. No scaring. Alessandro lifted his hands. In mock surrender. I'll stay right here at the same distance. When you need me, I'll take one step forward. When you're tired, I'll step back too. But the prediction, he paused, then smiled, that I'll keep. Alina gave him a playful glare, but her lips curved up. You're stubborn. Stubborn for something. Beautiful is worth it, he said, voice soft like a secret. A tender silence filled the room. Elena leaned back, gazing at the basil pot, which was placed perfectly where the light touched it. She saw her own life in it, battered by wind, leaves torn, yet still green again when watered, and turned the right way. Are you free tomorrow? She asked suddenly. I'll make pesto again. This time no sulking, it'll be seasoned, right? Free? Alessandro replied so quickly. They both laughed. My job is to bring the bread, right? And tell a funny story. Elena nodded. Tonight you told the truth. Tomorrow make me laugh, deal? He stood pushing in his chair quietly. I'll head out. Get some rest. If you can't sleep, count. How many times? You laughed today? Quite a few, Elena teased. You win. No, it's a tie. Alessandro corrected, because I laugh plenty too. He walked to the door. Before opening it, he turned back. Elena, thank you for trusting me enough to tell. She nodded, eyes shimmering. Thank you for listening and for still being Alessandro. The door closed. The kitchen returned to quiet, but not empty quiet. Elena cradled her cup of tea, sitting a little longer. The drink had cooled, but something inside her had warmed. She looked around. The green basil, the soft yellow lights, the half-empty tin of cookies. Small things, but it was the small things pushing the shadows back from the room's edges. Before bed, Elena typed a short message. Elena, don't forget the bread tomorrow. The reply came almost instantly. Alessandro, and I'll bring the laughter. Elena smiled, setting her phone down. That night, she slept soundly, not because a detective was nearby, but because there was a man named Alessandro who had promised to stand in just the right place, close enough to hear her laugh, far enough not to frighten her. And just like that, the darkness cracked open, enough for dawn to find its way in. On Monday morning, Elena stepped out of her apartment with her familiar handbag. A cool breeze swept by, carrying the scent of fresh bread from the bakery at the Pinewy at the Puvy corner. After months, she had chosen to go back to work. Not as the girl hiding in the shadows, but as Elena with a new rhythm to life. On her way to the neighborhood magazine office, her phone buzzed. A text from Alessandro. Alessandro, don't forget lunch. I don't want to file a report about someone fainting from hunger. Elena laughed, quickly typing back. Elena, what are you, my health secretary? Alessandro. Health secretary, mealtime reminder. And if necessary, amateur cook. Walking down the street, Elena smiled so wide that a few people turned to glance at her, but she didn't mind. It felt like a small bell ringing inside her chest, signaling that life had begun to move forward again. Her first day back, college welcomed Elena with gentle hugs and warm eyes. A few asked how she was. She simply smiled and answered, I'm fine now. And strangely, this time she truly felt that it was true. During her break, as she opened the small lunchbox she had prepared, another message popped up. Alessandro, a photo of a sandwich. I've eaten. Check my assignment. Elena, photo of pesto lunchbox. No one gets to grade this assignment but me. Alessandro, then I'm applying as your full-time student. She shook her head, covering her mouth to stifle her laughter, afraid her co-workers might notice. But sometimes the chuckle escaped too quickly, and a few of the women nearby looked over and smiled along. That weekend, Alessandro invited Elena for a walk. Not a date, he stressed, just a trial run for my walking shoes. They wandered along small streets, passing a second-hand bookshop where the pages had yellowed like sunlight. Alessandro lifted a detective novel and held it out. Does this title suit me? Elena glanced at the cover. The Man Who Loved Ice Cream and Solved Crimes. She burst into giggles. Perfect. You're more suited to that than a grim detective. Then I'll buy it so one day I can perform it for you. Oh goodness. Elena shook her head. You should try comedy theater instead. Alessandro replied with a mime-like bow that made her double over laughing right there on the street. Passers-by turned to look, but Elena didn't care. For the first time, her laughter rang out boldly, no longer held back. That evening, they carried home a bag full of vegetables and cheese. Alessandro insisted on cooking. Do you know how to make anything besides boiling pasta? Elena teased. Hidden talents, Alessandro answered, tying a kitchen towel around his waist. Tonight, you'll witness the mysterious case of the onion soup. Elena laughed so hard she almost dropped the knife. That name already sounds inedible. He pretended to be serious. Onion soup is evidence. If it tastes good, I'm innocent. If it's awful, you convict me with one baguette. Deal, Elena said, handing him the knife. In the tiny kitchen, knives chopped and laughter echoed. Alessandro clumsily dropped onion skins on the floor, and Elena teased while cleaning. Truly, a detective who's clumsy in the kitchen. He looked up, a streak of flour on his nose. This is a strategy to hide fingerprints. Elena laughed until her stomach hurt, the sound ringing through the apartment. It had been so long since the rooms were filled with laughter. Not tears, not sighs, but warm, vibrant joy. When the onion soup finally came out, Elena tasted it. Pleasantly surprised by its delicate sweetness and gentle warmth. Huh, not bad, she nodded. Not guilty. Then I hereby acquit myself. Alessandro grinned, pouring more wine. To celebrate a victorious trial. No more analogies. Elena laughed, waving him off. Let's just call this a peaceful dinner. They ate, golden light spilling over the small table. A sense of familiarity spread, as if they had known each other far longer. Elena no longer flinched when Alessandro's gaze lingered on her. And when he shared some trivial story, she laughed without restraint. See? Alessandro tilted his head, his lips curving. I told you I love hearing you laugh. Elena froze. Such a simple sentence, but it sent waves through her chest. She lowered her head, pretending to ladle more soup to hide her flushed cheeks. After dinner, as Alessandro helped tidy up, Elena watched him bent over the sink. A strange thought flickered through her mind. Maybe I can start trusting a little more. Late at night, Elena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The echoes of laughter still lingered in her apartment. She brushed her lips over her red lipstick and smiled faintly. Suddenly, she realized she no longer counted her fears, but had begun counting little joys. Those joys could be playful messages during lunch breaks, a spontaneous stroll through the city, or the sweet aroma of onion soup in her kitchen. And those joys, Elena knew, were slowly teaching her an important lesson. How to trust and how to love again from the beginning. A year had flown by like a bird crossing the sky. Elena stood at the door of her new apartment, her heart both excited and uncertain. The place was small but bright, its wide windows open to let sunlight pour in. So different from the dark room where she had once shut herself away. That morning, Alessandro arrived early, carrying a box of paint and a few brushes. In a white t-shirt and worn jeans, He looked less like a stern detective and more like an accidental handyman. Homicide detectives have never worked this hard. Painting ceilings, he muttered, rolling paint overhead, his voice tinged with mock complaint. Elena laughed, handing him a water bottle. If you're already complaining, who's supposed to endure it? I'm the one climbing the chair. No, let me do it, Alessandro said sternly, though the corner of his lips curved up. If you fall, I'll have to write a report several pages long. Too much trouble. Elena shot him a mock glare, but warmth filled her chest. She crouched to paint the lower corners while Alessandro took care of the ceiling. Each time paint dripped down, she stifled her laughter while he shook his head. A great detective defeated by drops of white paint? By afternoon, they sat resting against a wall, still tacky with fresh paint, cups of cool tea in hand. The room was bare but filled with sunlight. The sound of birds outside drifting in through the balcony. Elena inhaled deeply, feeling as though she herself had been repainted. Clean, new, refreshed. See, she whispered. This apartment feels like a new chapter. Yeah, Alessandro nodded. And it needs plenty of laughter to fill it. He leaned over, brushing her nose with a fingertip, still smudged with paint. Hey, Elena laughed, wiping it off with a towel. Now I look like a clown. That's fine, he murmured, and then pressed a soft kiss to her lips. The scent of paint mixed with tea. Funny yet sweet. In the days that followed, the apartment slowly became a home. Together, they built bookshelves, hung curtains, and even picked plants for the balcony. Alessandro deliberately chose a large basil pot, setting it beside the small one Elena had once tended. So, your basil has a friend? He smiled. No one should be alone. At night, they cooked in the new kitchen. Alessandro was still clumsy, dropping spoons, cutting vegetables unevenly. But Elena couldn't stop laughing. You're fit to be a detective. Not a chef. Cooking still needs lots of practice. My goal isn't the food, he countered, eyes twinkling. It's making you laugh. After dinner, they sat on the balcony, hands entwined, watching the city lights flicker on. Elena rested her head on Alessandro's shoulder, her heart more peaceful than it had ever been. Even after every storm, she had survived. One weekend morning, Elena woke to sunlight streaming into the room and the sound of birds chirping outside. From the kitchen came the smell of coffee, along with Alessandro fumbling with the coffee machine, mumbling to himself. She walked up quietly and wrapped her arms around his waist. Good morning, she whispered. Alessandro turned, smiling. Good morning, my dawn. The words made Elena's eyes sting. She realized it had been a year since she was trembling in the dark, convinced she would never dare to trust or love again. And yet, now here she was, standing in a sunlit apartment, holding a man who made her laugh and feel safe. You know, Alessandro said, placing a cup of coffee in her hands. I used to think I was used to the darkness of my work, but since meeting you, I've learned what a real dawn looks like. Elena bit her lip, looking up at him. In his eyes, she saw not just the calm of a detective, but the tenderness of a man who truly loved. She smiled softly, tightening her grip on his hand. Alessandro, I once thought my life had closed for good, but it turns out it was just waiting to open in a brighter place. He didn't answer, only pulled her closer and pressed a kiss to her forehead. The whole room sank into sweet silence. Just the beat of their hearts in sunlight glimmering through the curtains. That night, Elena wrote in a new notebook. Life can begin again, gentle and fresh. And this time, I'm not alone. She closed the notebook and turned to see Alessandro reading beside her, a smile spreading across her lips. Her new dawn wasn't just in the sunlight pouring through the window, but in every hand held, every tender kiss, and every burst of laughter echoing through this home. 2 years had passed since the day Elena first walked into Cantino Dono with tired eyes and a heart heavy with fear. Today, on a weekend afternoon, The little Italian restaurant glowed with warm lights once more. The same red brick walls, the checkered tablecloths, the soft music drifting like an old conversation. But Elena was different now. Her eyes sparkled with joy. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders, her smile whole and radiant. Alessandro held her hand as they entered, not rushing to choose a table. From across the room, Rosa De Luca, the silver-haired waitress, recognized them instantly, her smile lighting up. "Oh, you found your way back here," she exclaimed with a playful glance toward the young waiter. She added her table. Elena's table. Elena hesitated for a moment. She was about to ask, which one? And then she remembered. The small wooden table by the bookshelf where she had once nodded yes to let a stranger sit beside her. They sat down. Elena traced the edge of the wooden table, familiar feelings washing over her like a breeze. "How many years has it been?" she whispered. 2 years, Alessandro answered, resting his chin on his hand, eyes gleaming, and one prediction. Elena looked up, puzzled. But before she could speak, he rose to his feet. He walked around to her side and knelt beside the wooden chair. The whole restaurant seemed to slow down. A few guests turned their heads. Rosa De Luca watched from the counter, dabbing her eyes with her apron. Alessandro pulled out a velvet blue box from his pocket. When it opened, the ring glistened under the golden lights. Looking straight at Elena, his smile shone bright. "Remember the very first day I predicted that you would become my wife?" Elena covered her mouth, tears welling. Instantly, memories rushed back. The Elena who had once shrunk into darkness, guarded and wary, and Alessandro reading his book, making the half-playful, half-serious remark. She had once laughed it off, once called him troublesome. And yet today that prediction was coming true. "Alessandro," she choked out, her smile trembling through her tears. "You really never know how to lose, do you?" He shrugged, his grin both solemn and mischievous. "Not losing because I've chosen to spend my whole life winning your heart." Applause began in scattered claps, then swelled through the restaurant. Rosa De Luca wiped her eyes, whispering, "Better than any Italian film." Elena held out her hand, and Alessandro slid the ring onto her finger. The metal was cool against her skin, but her heart blazed warm. Tears spilled freely now, but they were tears of happiness. He stood, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her gently at that small wooden table. The sounds of the restaurant faded. All that remained was the rhythm of two hearts beating as one. That night they lingered at the same table as if time had bent full circle. Elena bit her lip, her eyes glistening. Strange, isn't it? How does a little corner table hold an entire journey? Alessandro squeezed her hand, his voice low and steady. "From pain to laughter, from being alone to us." Elena nodded, smiling through her tears. "I once thought life had closed its doors, but it turns out it was only waiting to open somewhere brighter. Right here, between laughter and love." He kissed her again, slow and tender, sealing it with certainty. Outside, the city lights spilled across the cobblestone streets. Inside, Camino Dono hummed with an old Italian tune. And at that small table, a prediction once half playful had become the truth. From now on, the little corner table wasn't just the place where it all began, but a symbol of their journey, of moving from darkness to dawn, from fear to love, from a teasing forecast to a love that would endure. And Elena knew her new dawn wasn't somewhere far away, but right here, sitting across from her, smiling, holding her hand, and never letting go. The prediction made 2 years ago had come true. Elena laughed through her tears of joy, while Alessandro proved that sometimes patience and genuine love could turn a tiny corner table into an entire white.